Genesis 17 marks one of the most powerful turning points in the life of Abram and in the unfolding story of God's covenant with his people. By this time, Abram was 99 years old. Many years had passed since God first promised that he would become the father of a great nation. From a human perspective, that promise must have seemed impossible. Abram and Sarai were far beyond the age of having children. Yet God appeared to Abram and reminded him of a profound truth. Nothing is impossible for God. The first thing God did was change Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of many nations. In the Bible, a name often reflects identity and purpose. God was not just renaming Abraham, he was redefining his future. Every time Abraham heard his new name, he would be reminded of God's promise even before he saw it fulfilled. This teaches us that God often calls us according to what we will become, not just what we currently are. God also changed Sarai's name to Sarah, meaning princess. This is significant because the promise was not only about Abraham. Sarah would play a central role in God's plan. Despite her age and past barrenness, God promised that she would bear a son. Through her, nations and kings would arise. This reminds us that God values and includes everyone in his covenant purposes. No one is forgotten in God's plan. Another important element in this chapter is the establishment of circumcision as the sign of the covenant between God and Abraham, his descendants. A covenant is more than a simple agreement. It is a sacred, binding relationship. Circumcision was an outward sign of an inward commitment, a mark that Abraham's family belonged to God. It symbolized obedience, faith, and separation for a holy purpose. For believers today, while we may not share that same physical sign, the principle remains. Our relationship with God should be visible in the way we live. Faith is not meant to be hidden. It transforms our identity and our actions. When Abraham heard that Sarah would have a child, he laughed not necessarily in disbelief, but in amazement. The promise seemed too wonderful to comprehend. Yet God was faithful. He instructed Abraham to name the promised son Isaac, which means he laughs, turning Abraham's astonishment into a lasting reminder of joy. Genesis 17 ultimately shows us that God keeps his promises, even when circumstances seem impossible. It reminds us that God works on his timeline, not ours. Abraham had to wait many years, but during that waiting, God was shaping his faith. This passage encourages us to trust God fully. Sometimes we may feel too old, too weak, or too ordinary for God to use us. But Abraham and Sarah's story proves that God specializes in doing the impossible. He calls us forward, gives us a new identity, and invites us into his greater purpose. Just as God transformed Abram into Abraham, he is able to transform our lives today. Our role is to walk before him faithfully, trust his promises, and believe that what he has spoken will come to pass.